Today, GameStop shares get killed, plummeting lower at lightning speed after last week's unprecedented Reddit-fueled buying frenzy that captured the world's attention. But Robinhood remains in hot water after imposing multi-day trading limits on certain stocks. So how will the whole ordeal affect the app's plans for a blockbuster IPO later this year? And finally, last but definitely not least, Amazon is getting a new CEO. That's right, Jeff Bezos is planning on stepping down, and he just named his replacement. I'm MacKenzie Sigalos, and this is CNBC After Hours. Stocks rallied higher for the second day in a row, with the Dow, S&P, and NASDAQ all posting solid gains. But after today's closing bell, Amazon dropped some major news. Founder and CEO Jeff Bezos is stepping down from the top job. Later this year, Bezos will become the company's executive chairman, and Andy Jassy, who currently runs Amazon's super lucrative AWS cloud computing business, will become the CEO. Jassy has had an epic rise at Amazon. He started as a marketing manager there in 1997 and then went on to found AWS in 2003. The cloud computing division is now Amazon's main money-making machine. Be sure to dive into that massive leadership change by checking out our coverage on CNBC.com. But during trading hours today, the biggest story was the collapse of GameStop. The video game retailer skyrocketed more than 380% last week on the back of a Reddit-fueled effort to squeeze the hedge funds that had sold the stock short. But take a look at it now. Since the highs on Thursday, GameStop stock has lost 81% of its value. Shares have plummeted even faster than they rallied. Meanwhile, as the stock was in freefall, Robinhood eased its limits on restricted stocks, although did not get rid of them altogether. Today, the trading app began allowing users to buy up to 100 shares of GameStop, as opposed to the 20-share limit that was in place before. Robinhood has found itself at the center of this whole ordeal. Users have called for a boycott, lawmakers plan to hold hearings, and now the CEO is expected to testify this month in front of the House of Representatives. It's terrible timing for the fintech unicorn, which was set for a blockbuster IPO this year. So what happens now? CNBC's Leslie Picker can explain.
I would say we could go back only as far as a week and a half ago, and Robinhood was set to be one of the most hotly anticipated IPOs of the year. It was reportedly seeking a valuation of about $20 billion, had hired its lead underwriter. Now there's a lot more questions about the state of its IPO, what that valuation might look like, how things have really changed since all of this GameStop frenzy has kind of come into the forefront, with Robinhood being really at the center of the whole thing. They've got regulatory challenges, they've got legal challenges, they've got political challenges, and they have customer challenges, the user challenges, I should say. The people who use their site to trade have been publicly calling for boycotts, they've been signing on to class action suits. There's been this massive backlash on a multitude of fronts. All of those things could affect the business in the long term. All of those things would weigh on a valuation potentially, and it's something that investors would be very keen to talk about with the CEO. It hasn't actually been that capital intensive of a business model, but when you do have such high volatility in a select pocket of the market, it requires Robinhood to have a lot more cash on hand in order to meet its regulatory obligations and make sure that it can stay afloat as a business essentially. And so what it's done is it's drawn down on credit lines, it's raised additional equity in order to really bulk up its ability to have a solvent balance sheet and be able to post that collateral in order to ensure that the users can trade on their platform. CEO Vlad Tenev, he came on our air and he said, yes, we need cash. No, it's not a liquidity issue. He said over and over again that they don't have a liquidity issue. Now, what's really going on behind the scenes, I'm not exactly sure with regard to their balance sheet. None of that is public information. But it's clear that this company is trying to raise cash, and billions and billions and billions of dollars in cash from every which way. So from that standpoint, an IPO would actually be one of the best things they could possibly do because it's a fundraising event at the end of the day. It's a way to raise money from investors. And then once you're public, you can keep going back to the public markets to raise more and more money from investors. The problem is actually getting over that hump of getting public. And of course, in doing a traditional IPO, you have to sit, and these days it's over Zoom, but you sit alongside or at the other end of the table from investors, and you're oftentimes asked some pretty tough questions.
Okay, let's get to our sound check. Here's a roundup of the day's biggest action and what the top newsmakers and business leaders had to say on CNBC's airwaves.
You're seeing a lot of signs of a market top, and frankly, this volatility that you described amongst retail investors, chasing up a few names and trying to, again, speculate, frankly, rather than invest, is just symptomatic of what we see in the broader markets.
CBO is estimating a GDP of growth of 3.8% this coming year. CBO is saying that by June, employment will be back to pre-COVID levels, attributing that to these COVID packages we've already had. So yes, we can do it bipartisan.
Starting to see the evolution of applications on blockchain that are really starting to build marketplaces. And I think younger kids, Gen Z in particular, maybe younger millennials, have a different approach to how they look at stores of value.
They've really built Drizzly the right way so that we can now be confident going to merchants, whether they're alcohol merchants or restaurant merchants, and letting them know that we have a safe and effective way for you to sell alcohol, which is incredibly high margin.
All right, so SpaceX, which is helmed by billionaire Elon Musk, made a major announcement yesterday. It will launch 4 private individuals into orbit later this year. The company is calling it the world's first all-civilian mission. CNBC's Brennan has all the details on this historic spaceflight and what it means for the still nascent space tourism industry.
SpaceX is going where no man has gone before. This is the first ever all-civilian flight to space. It's going to be 4 passengers launching from Kennedy Space Center atop a Falcon 9 rocket inside a Dragon capsule. They're going to go for a 2 to 4 day trip in orbit around Earth before touching back down in the water. The mission's called Inspiration 4. This is being created by and funded by billionaire Jared Isaacman, who is the founder and the CEO of a payment processing company called Shift4. Isaacman is donating 3 out of 4 seats aboard that Crew Dragon. One's going to go to a frontline worker. One is going to be given randomly to a donor for the St. Jude's fundraiser that is taking place around this mission. And then one is going to be awarded in a competition to either a new or existing user of Shift4's e-commerce platform. So now Isaacman, who is also an accomplished pilot with a number of world records due to some of his very own flights, is going to be the 4th person who is on that Dragon headed to space. He is going to be the commander of the flight.
I've had, total exposure to the training curriculum that we'll be undertaking throughout this year. I am very confident we'll be well prepared for this mission later in 2021.
There have been instances over the years where civilians have actually headed to space and gone to orbit, but every single time they have been accompanied by a seasoned and experienced astronaut. So this marks a real first. It was less than 2 years ago that NASA actually reversed course and said, yes, we are now open to paying passengers to civilians going to orbit. That had not been the case before, and it speaks to how quickly now, after so many years of development, we are beginning to see these tourism efforts really ramp up. We don't know the price tag for Isaacman's trip later this year. They did not disclose that. We do know that other trips that are being developed through other companies right now are in the range of about $55 million per seat. What Musk has been very adamant about in terms of this Inspiration 4 trip is the fact that even though, yes, it's still expensive to travel to space, there is a democratization of space that is essentially afoot. And it's trips like this that not only raise the public's awareness and get people excited about the possibility of traveling to space, but also the more they can do these types of trips, the more they can ultimately begin to lower the cost and then raise the accessibility of more people being able to go.
When America went to the moon in '69, it wasn't just a few people. Humanity went to the moon. We all went there with them. And I think it's something similar here. We will all be with Jared on the journey, and we'll be seeing it in real time.
Okay, time for today's numbers round. We'll start with 135,000. Elon Musk is in the news today for one of his other companies as well, Tesla, which is recalling 135,000 vehicles over touchscreen failures. The move to recall a mixture of Model S sedans and Model X SUVs follows pressure from regulators. Now, last month, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration asked Tesla to recall nearly 160,000 cars after it concluded that problems with the center console screens posed safety issues. The recall will begin at the end of March, and unlike other issues with Tesla software, this one can't be completed remotely. Next, 20. Impossible Foods is slashing its suggested retail price for U.S. grocery stores by 20% as the alternative protein company tries to compete with the meat product that it's trying to replace. The recommended retail price for the brand's meat-free burger is now $5.49 for patties and $6.99 for a 12-ounce package. Now, even though the lower prices make the alternative protein products more competitive, Impossible Foods consumers will still be paying more than double for the meat-free option, according to the Department of Agriculture's latest report on beef prices. And finally, 32.2 million. The United States has crossed a significant milestone in the fight against the coronavirus pandemic. Total vaccinations have surpassed the total number of COVID cases. According to the CDC, as of yesterday, there have been roughly 26 million confirmed cases of COVID-19, while about 32.2 million people have received at least one dose of the vaccine. Now, to be clear, the country still has a long road ahead, as most Americans are still months away from getting vaccinated while new and more contagious variants spread throughout the population. Get the latest developments in the COVID vaccine rollout by going to CNBC.com and downloading the CNBC app. That's it for After Hours. We'll be back here in our home office every Tuesday and Thursday, so be sure to catch us then.